Hello, fellow Wolverines. I am Laura Oberstadt Abley. I'm here at my home in Los Angeles. I graduated in April of 1994 from the University of Michigan Dearborn. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and minors in Business and Communications. I pursued a career in the entertainment industry, and today I'm a marketing executive at the Walt Disney Company. Welcome to my presentation. From Dearborn to Hollywood, 10 truths I learned while navigating the ever-changing entertainment biz. I'm so honored to have the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm so fortunate to have a career that I love. I've mostly been in marketing strategy, which means I manage the overall campaign. I don't make movies. I just try to convince people to see them. This was always part of my plan, as much as anything can be planned. But I also produce events. Like booths, like trade booths and some consumer-facing booths and displays and live stage presentations. I never planned for that part of my job. It just always seems to find me, and I really love that other component of marketing. Whenever somebody asks me how I got my job or how to meet the right people, I consistently give them the same advice. It recurs again and again in my own career, and it really isn't specific to any industry. So I hope it provides you some perspective as you start your own career after UMD. One thing I knew was that I wanted a long career. I had to be really excited. I had to be really invested in the work. If I was going to spend that many hours of any day doing anything, it had to be something that I love. I just happen to choose an industry that's always been on shaky ground. And that's not even an earthquake joke. This business is always restructuring. It's always dramatic. There are new formats, new trends. And just during my time in it alone, there we go. In the last 20 years, which is about how long my career has been at this point, home entertainment got huge. We had VH rentals turning to DVD and Blu-ray purchases to video on demand, and now we're all streaming. The theatrical business, it's in jeopardy one day and record-breaking the next, but the pandemic has put us at a near standstill. And then there are industry and economic shifts like mergers, acquisitions, leadership changes, and recessions. It just never seems to end. It's always moving. But I want to go back to 1990, back when I was in school. Go Blue. I went through my stuff. I went through a lot of stuff just to get prepared for this presentation and also to put myself back in your shoes. Like, what was it like to be at the very beginning? I found a couple of fun things. I found my old pennant that I used to hang up in my room, showing my school spirit. And I also found, all right, that's not good. I also found my diploma. This is the most expensive piece of paper I own. I also found my transcripts, which reminded me just how much college challenged me. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I got into school, so I started in the business school. I thought that was a very practical way to go. So sophomore year, that meant I took calculus. Now, in the best of circumstances, I was going to struggle with that class. But at the same time, my grandmother was terminally ill at home, and it was so difficult for me emotionally. I was nowhere near equipped to handle both, but there was one I could control and one I couldn't. So that leads me to my first point, my first truth, if you will. If you're in over your head, is it worth the investment to stick it out? I should have dropped calc. I could have taken it later, but instead I stuck with it and I did not do well at all. That happening shook my confidence. Let's just put aside what was happening at home. I was so disappointed in myself, and I put myself at a huge disadvantage academically. To be fair, I almost took this out of the presentation because I'm still embarrassed about it to this day. I'd never done so poor, had such a bad experience in school. I'd always managed to be a really good student, but it's really important to my story because it really taught me like one of the most key lessons as I started to move on through my career. 90% of the time when I'm in over my head, I need to step it up and I need to rise to the challenge. But there's like 10% of the time where there's really a no-win situation. And this was one of them. But some good things were happening. I was loving my communications courses. At the time I was at U of M, it was only a minor. I think you can get a full degree in it now, a BA. But I was doing so well there. And then I thought psychology maybe seemed like a better fit for me. So I switched majors. And also a friend wanted me to apply with her as a DJ at WUMD College Radio. So I did that. And there's me, graduation. Yeah, I graduated. This DJ slot turned into music and program director positions at the station the rest of my time while I was there. I would talk to record label promotions people, and I thought, I want to be one of them. And then I was also taking sociology classes and realized I love studying the behaviors of groups of people, especially as it related to marketing products. So suddenly I had this purpose, marketing for record companies. So I switched to the sociology major and I doubled down to finish my degree and get those minors. One of my first radio station contacts had recommended me for a job at a music promotions company in New Jersey. Let's start the timeline. New Year's Eve, 1994, I packed my Ford Escort like to the hilt and I moved from Dearborn to Island, New Jersey. Did I hang out with the band? I did not hang out with the band. I sat in a cube calling record stores. Tower, Warehouse, Strawberries, Camelot, Record Town. They were all stores back in the 90s. None of them exist now. But I would ask them if they were stocking CDs. I was right outside of New York City. That's where the dream job was going to be. I was convinced. But as open jobs were posted, the ones I was gravitating towards were in LA. And I really didn't love this job. This brings me to truth number 2. Do a good job anyway. Like if you remember only one thing that I say today, it's this one. You just don't know what you're going to learn, the task you're going to do, who you're going to meet that's going to pay off later. Trust me. It happens to me over and over again, even to this day. So in this job, I was offered a promotion, but even when I was waitressing, I could barely pay my third of the rent. Credit card debt was stressing me out. And more importantly, I was on the wrong coast. So exactly 1 year later, I moved back home to save money to move to LA. So back in Michigan, I had this assistant job at a human resources agency. My brother had worked there and helped get me the job. I had this amazing boss. She gave me this wide variety of really challenging projects, just really starting that thought of thinking differently. And she encouraged me to take as much training as possible because it was a human resources company. We had a full training arm of the company. I learned Excel, PowerPoint, Word. They were pretty new at the time from the ground up. I took every level of class that I could take during my time there. And I ended up being the PowerPoint expert and made all of the presentations for the research team. My boss ultimately knew that I wanted to go to LA, and we had a sister company there who needed a new research analyst. So she recommended me for the job. So I was on my way to LA. So I packed that Escort again and moved to LA in the fall of 1997. That job was a really bad fit. I'll just leave it at that. Could I have made it work over time? I don't know, maybe I could have, but I thought about calculus class. Was this worth the investment? It's not why I moved here, so I quit. So here I am in a new job, or no job, new town. It was a pretty scary time, but I opted to go to an employment agency that specialized in entertainment jobs. I scored crazy high on the competence tests they make you take because of all of that training back in Michigan. They had a role at the Jim Henson Company, but it was in human resources. I asked if there were any marketing roles, and in typical LA fashion, they said, take it or leave it. So I took it. As a longtime fan of the Muppets, it was pretty surreal to be working at their company. Where the office was at the time, I could see the Hollywood sign through the window. It was this daily reminder of like my courage to move that far from home. The temp job ultimately turned permanent. It wasn't in marketing, but it was such a great company. I got to see the Creature Shop, which was a huge deal for me at the time. And I did have my first celebrity sighting, which was Leonardo DiCaprio, who was filming a commercial right outside our office. So my boss, being in HR and being in the entertainment industry, she was asked for referrals from contacts all over the industry pretty regularly. And one day a job came through the fax machine, that's how long ago this was, from New Line Cinema, and they were looking for a marketing coordinator. The job was written for me, but she had just made me permanent. It just didn't feel like the right time to leave. I just felt like it would be very ungrateful for me to just step out on her right now. But fate would step in because she came to me a couple days after that fax came through and said she was leaving the company to pursue photography. So I had nothing left to lose. I asked her if she would refer me for the job. The job was on the home entertainment side. They were staffing up because this new DVD format was really growing and they needed someone to work on campaigns to sell them into retail stores. Well, I knew every retail store from that job in New Jersey. And so with her referral and that knowledge, I got this job. Yay. New Line Cinema, it's a mini major studio. That's how it was dubbed in the trades. It's known for niche product like urban films and raunchy comedies and so many horror films. It had recently been brought under the Time Warner umbrella. Even with that association with a really big company, it was a smaller company, which meant we have fewer people covering more responsibilities. It was the ideal place to learn. I started in October 1998 and I worked for 2 marketing directors. I did entry-level stuff, which is not any fun. It's never any fun. But my bosses had these really big ideas and limited time to make them happen, which brings me to my next truth: efficiency. Do tedious tasks fast and well to make room for more challenging work. You know, if you can't answer a phone, your boss isn't going to let you write a marketing plan. So it's really important that quality never suffers. And this is the area where you put technology to work for you, whether it's a spreadsheet or tapping into an existing database. I don't care. Look around the company and find ways with resources that are already there, could easily be creative and make that report that takes you 2 hours take 20 minutes. I still do this today because every job has tasks that take too long. So back then, though, I just made room so I could spend more time taking my boss's really great ideas and making them happen. And it made my learning curve go just that much quicker. But my original plan when I landed at New Line was to do this job for about 2 years and then transfer to theatrical or leave and go to a bigger studio. Home Ent was getting huge and I got promoted to a manager. I didn't get the top tier releases at first, but I kept proving myself and getting bigger and bigger titles. It was such a diverse slate. I have to say, this is where the marketing thing, where I just kept getting more and more information that I was on the right path, because having a company that had these diverse slate, all these different types of films, I realized the part of marketing that was the most fun was figuring out who each film was for and how to reach them with a campaign. I mean, there were times I was working on one film, this really small film about monks watching soccer. And I got in touch with these incredible group of people to help promote the film within that community. But I mean, that's just a very small example, but just, you know, if it's a big action film, that speaks to somebody else, romantic comedy speaks to somebody else. So it was really great to kind of tap into that. But change was in the air at the company, and AOL had acquired Time Warner in one of the biggest mergers of all time, and half of my coworkers were let go. That leads me to truth number 4. I still have a moment. I'll never forget that day in the office. It was actually one of the most upsetting days in a work environment, is when people get let go like that. But what I got out of it was that overwhelming change and uncertainty are stressful. No kidding, right? But look for the opportunity. It could be the best thing that happens to you. In the aftermath of that merger, I got promoted and was given the assignment that would change my career. It was a Lord of the Rings trilogy. I wasn't a lifelong fan. I had yet to even read the books. And our chairman famously bet the studio on these films, so there was no pressure to do well. But they invited us to see 20 minutes of early footage, and it was so remarkable. Just that 20 minutes, I was completely in. I knew I'd do anything for this film. This was also the chance I got to produce my very first event. We had the idea DVD was, I just want to plant the seed that DVD was huge then. I mean, huge collectible, extended editions, deluxe editions. It was all about the DVD and all the extras. So we had this embarrassment of riches on this film, and we decided to put out the theatrical version shortly after the in-theater release. So we were doing that like in the spring, but we were going to put out this super extended edition before the next film came out in like around Christmas time. So this was really unusual in my industry. And so what we decided to do was hold this event. It was the first event I got to produce. And we created it to pitch this dual release to retailers and press. It was on the Warner Brothers lot. It looked very hobbity, if you can, very green, a lot of comfort food. It was great. But the talent turned out to be way more than we planned. I think we had timed it like around a premiere. They were doing something in LA. So when the talent started showing up at the event, we had more people than we had like staff to sort of make, you have to kind of keep an eye on them, like make sure they get down the red carpet and make sure they know where to sit and they know what to do. So I had to step in and do the painfully hard task of being Orlando Bloom's guide through this event. So I got him out of the limo and down the red carpet and then to a seat, got him on stage, just do the event, anything he needed to do. And then it was time for him to go back to his limo, and he planted a very polite British kiss on my cheek before leaving. Events rock. I was pretty much sold on that task. But once we got into the heavy lifting of the campaign, the film producers felt like we needed to actually go to Weta, where they're filming, making the films, and get approvals and more assets and just sort of get our heads around the scope of the project. So we were off to New Zealand, 14 hours on a plane, and we arrived in this beautiful country. And you will never meet a group of more talented people than those people at Weta. I mean, they were kind, they were funny, they were resourceful. What they were doing there was groundbreaking. They were dedicated to doing everything the best. It was just amazing the things I got to see. I got to look through sketchbooks, early sketchbooks, and we looked at practical props. They demonstrated like how they made chainmail. It was, and swords. We got to see just like rows and rows of costumes. It was really amazing. And even more amazing was that I got to go back for each film. I'd never been so immersed in a project. I mean, I wasn't part of the process that made movies, but getting exposure to the filmmaker's vision made me that more connected to what had to be communicated in the campaign. I mean, the films were groundbreaking. There was a character of Gollum who was all digitally creative. So it became very difficult on my side to tell the producers I worked with that we couldn't do something. I mean, they were doing the impossible, so why couldn't we? I quickly learned that "we can't" was often considered a lazy answer. No detail was too small. I could tell you a story about every single panel on this extended DVD box. I won't, and you're welcome. But the project became that precise. I was constantly challenged to find solutions to new problems, compress deadlines, exhaust every avenue, and no matter how ridiculous the idea or the problem might solve. But this made me a better worker, exponentially increased my ability to solve problems quickly. And that leads me to truth number 5. Practice problem solving. Get help when you need it, but have at least one suggestion to contribute. I don't care how crazy it is, contribute something. The whole point is to keep a project moving forward. And when there's a problem and you don't address it, it just sits there. The problem just never goes away and the project comes to a screeching halt. At the same time, event planning came calling again. There's an event called Comic-Con. It's in San Diego, and it draws hundreds of thousands of pop culture enthusiasts for 4 days of unbridled fandom. So we decided to showcase the Lord of the Rings DVDs there. So year 1, we built this horrific corporate looking trade show booth and we gave away t-shirts. I mean, that's not good. We met amazing fans. We frustrated just as many. So I knew if we went back, there was no halfway. We had to be there for the fans. I mean, if you've ever been to this event, just the sheer number of people and the amount of creativity and expression from people who write comic books, and up and coming artists to like Star Wars was like, took over half of the space. So, I mean, the competition was fierce. So for the second film, we created a better display, which is not reflected by my low quality camera because we didn't have camera phones back then. But we did this great thing with a big screen, and it was for the two towers. So we had a big tower in the middle of the room that towered, literally towered over all the other displays. So it was really prominent. And we decided to do a stage presentation. We brought out the artists from Weta for costume and visual effects demonstrations. What I had planned on stage was literally a 3-ring circus, and I was a ringleader. The picture I have there is we brought out a stunt person and dressed him as a Uruk-hai, and he scared the bejesus out of me because he had actually intended to come up behind me and pick me up, which would have not gone well. Thankfully, he didn't. Aside from him wanting to pick me up on stage, we had so many technical hiccups that day. The venue was a little bit challenging to work with, but I also had this really incredible moment too. So we put fans in costumes on stage. They were the real costumes from the film. And I had met a guy at our booth who had his homemade costumes, like a warrior, like man. And I asked him if he wanted to wear the real costume, but it was going to require him to spend a whole day being dressed and fitted and told what to do. He said, yeah, absolutely. He embraced it full on. Again, he was fitted all day. They put the costume pieces on him. They taught him sword movements. It was really amazing. I knew I'd made his day, but I probably made his year. And again, this was another moment where the depth of marketing and the responsibility of marketing became very clear to me, and that was fandom. Like, how do you endear somebody to your product in a way that creates this emotional response? And every film is different. There was no one formula to achieve this. So the excitement I felt figuring out the campaign just deepened even more by, trying to tap into that emotional response. So finally, Return of the King came out, and I had my last crack at the Comic-Con crowd, and it was our best booth yet. On the right is the costume display. It was gorgeous. And we also hosted a panel. It was the first year in Hall H. Now, Hall H held 6,500 fans. We were more equipped technically to handle this. I had, you can see that I had producers on the film, people that helped work on the DVD, but I also had Billy Boyd, who played Pippin, and David Wenham, who played Faramir there. They all did really great on the panel. It was amazing to be on that stage, and it went perfectly this time. I have to say I'm technically an introvert, but something about being on a stage in front of that many people just really ignited me. I loved it. And this is hands down the #1 day of all time in my professional career. But after Lord of the Rings, it was back to reality. I went back to a normal influx of film releases, all still very exciting, but didn't have that same intensity of Lord of the Rings. And I was coming up on 10 years at New Line. I kept wondering, like, had I been there too long? What about my theatrical plan? You remember 10 years ago, I was talking about like like I'm going to stay here for 2 years, go to a bigger studio, go to theatrical, and that hadn't happened. I was already coming up on 10 years, still doing the same job. But I really loved it though. I mean, at this point, my boss had promoted me to senior vice president. Life was pretty good. Then it was decided that no longer would New Line need to be its own studio. Only development and production were necessary. All the marketing and distribution would be done by Warner Brothers. It would be absorbed into the AOL Time Warner system. So just like that, the decision was made for me. And in October of 1998, I was laid off from the company where I grew up and wondering what in the world comes next. I was about to find out how effective my networking skills had become. Which leads me to truth number 6. Nurture good relationships. You never know who will help you, and your next job will likely be through somebody you know. Make connections on the job with upper management, of course, and have a good relationship with your boss. But I'm talking about coworkers, vendors, people in other departments. Um, anybody that, obviously it's very good to be nice to everybody, but you just never know who knows somebody that knows somebody about the next job that you want. This is why I always tell students that internships are invaluable. There's so many requirements even for entry-level jobs that this is a way to get good job experience and make connections while you're still in school. So you're already starting to build that database of people you can reach out to. When I was every studio I've been at, I can't tell you how many interns were hired. Maybe if they didn't even intern in my department, a recommendation from another department certainly put their resume at the top of the list. So if you can do internships, even if it's not in the job or the industry you want to be in, I think it's a really well spent time. And also there's so many ways to connect to people today. LinkedIn just being one of them. It just doesn't mean when you reach out to people that they'll respond or they'll help. I think it's really important to find commonality and be selective about who you approach, especially if you don't know them personally. Be patient, which is really hard if you want a job now, but people are busy. Try not to take it personally, especially if it takes a long time to hear back or if you never hear back at all. Just be gracious and direct when you do get people's time. So I knew two things when I left New Line. I wanted to learn something new, and I wanted to go to a bigger studio. A former coworker had called me about a job at 20th Century Fox in international home entertainment. Now, international is a huge deal in the film business, and nobody did it better than Fox. Did I want to stay in home entertainment? Nah, not really. This would also be a pay cut and demotion. That's not good either. But I thought maybe taking a step back might ease the stress of learning international. And it was during a recession. So getting this opportunity was really fortunate as it was. I got that job in 2009. I was working in the Die Hard building right next to the historical Fox lot. And I was absolutely right. Taking a familiar role cleared the path for me to learn international marketing. And it took me a good year to understand international marketing. I can't possibly know what it's like to, what people in France or Japan or Argentina like. I really had to learn how to listen. And then I had to give them the tools to bring DVDs and Blu-rays to market. And I got to travel, which is something it wasn't important to me. I never anticipated, but it was a really pleasant surprise. I went to France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Mexico, Germany, Switzerland. I got to be on assignment in London for 6 weeks. And I have to tell you, flying business class is really, really great. I had a lot of fun projects during my time there. I always loved The Sound of Music, and I got to work on an anniversary version of that disc. I got to work on the James Bond collection. That was really cool. But I was really lucky to be there when Star Wars was coming out on Blu-ray. I'm a lifelong fan of the franchise, so being part of it was a really big deal for me. It was a really complex project. You'd be surprised at how hard it is to make consistent packaging around the world and just how much work that takes. And then we were invited to Skywalker Ranch. Now, if you're not a fan of Star Wars, that's probably no big deal to you. But if you are, you get it. I still have my mug. That day was amazing. But after the high of this project had passed, I started, I guess I'll describe as weird. I kind of withdrew from my job. Privately, I started having panic attacks. I felt stuck. I didn't know exactly why. Leads me to truth number 7. When you feel stuck, get out of your comfort zone. Travel, learn a new skill, challenge yourself in some way or any way. You'll see your situation with a fresh perspective. My solution to becoming unstuck was to take improv classes, and not the corporate ones with other suits like me. I was in LA. I wanted the real thing. So I signed up for a workshop at the Groundlings. I showed up for the first class, very nervous, by the way. There were writers, models. There's always a model. People learning English. I never thought about improv as a way to learn English if it's your second language. Thankfully, there were other people there like me getting out of a funk. and so many actors who wanted to be on Saturday Night Live more than anything. I had no idea how many people wanted to do that. I think it's important to say right now that I was not good at improv, but I loved it. It's 100% about thinking on your feet and saying yes. And I wasn't doing either thing well at that time. So it was exactly what I needed. It was goofy, it was awkward, but my class formed this bond and we rooted each other on no matter why we were there. I went on to take 3 more workshops. And so while all of this improv madness was going on, that new perspective came through. I realized why I was in this funk. And it was basically because I capped out on my job. I had nowhere left to grow. And this was no one's fault per se. I had just done everything that I could there. Luckily, at the same time, an international marketing strategy job on a theatrical team at Fox had opened up. Now, I've been passed over for theatrical jobs at other studios over the years. I actually considered not even applying. And my husband thought I was crazy. He's like, what's one more no? So once I decided to apply, I had this new energy from improv and I applied it. If I was going to strike out again, I was going down swinging for the fences. The hiring exec told me she had an overwhelming number of good candidates. I went through several rounds of interviews. I answered every one of their questions like my life depended on it. It was still a long shot at best, but I got the job. Truth number 8, what is a one more no? Courtesy of my husband. Go for it anyway. It might be a yes this time. I mean, what do they say for the lottery? You can't win if you don't play. I mean, I was learning improv to say yes. How could I have even been thinking about saying no to applying when I just spent 3 workshops motivating myself to say yes? What I say to you is take a chance. What's one more resume, one more call? Even if it's one more no, at least you tried and at least you know. So here I was, the dream job, finally. I just want to note that it only took 15 years to achieve the goal I set day 1 at New Line, but who's counting? But here I was, I'm closer to the fire. This is where the campaign begins. And thank God I learned international already, so I could just focus on learning theatrical marketing. But then again, if I hadn't learned international back in home entertainment, would I have even gotten this job, which becomes a chicken and egg thing, and I could spin for days wondering about that. But over my 6 years on this team, I was assigned a wide variety of films to oversee. My favorite top 2 were The Fault in Our Stars. If you are a fan of John Green and his books, you know that this book is really special. And the film adaptation I felt was equally as special. And we got to work with him. He was very involved and he's everything that you want him to be. His participation in the campaign just made it just that much more authentic. We did this amazing screening program around the world because we had this amazing fan base who were so precious about the book. And it was just so beautiful. They'd come out crying. They're all themed. Our territories did such an amazing job setting these up. And it really kind of laid the groundwork for the success that this film would have. It went way beyond our expectations and was just a really wonderful success. I also oversaw a trilogy called the Maze Runner trilogy, which didn't do as well here in the US, but we really did break out internationally. And the best thing about that was being on the international team, we got to take a lead in more of the campaign details. So it was really amazing to get to step in and more thoughts and more of our needs being heard because we knew that we were going to outperform internationally. Now this job also got me back into events. I tell you, they keep finding me. And I missed it from the Comic-Con days. So what we would do is we would present our movie slate to theater owners around the world. And that meant more travel. I went to Australia, Argentina, Hong Kong, Brazil, and especially Barcelona for Cine Europe. Fox likes spectacle in these presentations, so we were always pushing our boundaries. One year we did a live orchestra in front of a montage video that was playing, and they were actually scoring it in front of people. It was very risky. And then they played the iconic Fox Fanfare. So if you know what that is, it's pretty emotional when you hear it. It's been around for so long. Some of the other things that I did at Cine Europe was created this party for the Peanuts movie, which I'm a huge Peanuts fan. You're getting to hear all my Star Wars. You know exactly when I was born based on all my likes. But this party was so beautiful. I just wanted to live there forever. What we were tasked to do was take an artistic twist. The Peanuts movie was obviously for kids and it was very childish, but to have this adult party, we needed to put a certain twist on it. So we commissioned art. We had a contest and we commissioned art from all over the world to have like an art gallery. And we had all of these really artistic interpretations of beloved Peanuts characters. This is my number 2 favorite work moment of all time. If I could have lived in that room forever, I would have. We also did a great promotion for The Greatest Showman. We had a dance performance on stage, which was awesome. If you've seen the film, you know the dancing is incredible. So it was done by the same choreographer. And then we had Hugh Jackman there to present footage. And then we did another incredibly themed party. I got to meet Hugh Jackman. He's as wonderful as you think he is. And then we did a lounge space for Bohemian Rhapsody. And we also had the members of Queen and Rami Malek show up to promote the film. And we sponsored this really, really cool lounge. I just, again, you know, if I had more free time there, I would just pipe down in a chair, put some headphones on, and listen to Queen music for hours. I had loved this job. Like everything had led to this. The marketing part was the cerebral controlled planning piece of it. And it balanced with the events part that was so creative and experiential. I couldn't have been happier at this moment. But nothing lasts forever. And over time that started to change too. The events part and the in-theater planning needs of the department grew. And it was harder for me to manage campaigns with all these ancillary responsibilities I took on. I did like trailer planning, which is like, when is a new trailer going to be out in theaters or online? And I was also doing talent greetings, which is actually quite fun because I would write up a bunch of things that actors needed to say. And I'd say the most memorable was we had Ryan Reynolds in full Deadpool costume reading all of these things for all of these countries. I did international, so it was like all these special greetings we need to do for these countries. So I speak no other language other than English. And I would be shouting out how to pronounce things in German and French and all of these languages for him to say in these greetings. So it was a lot of fun. He was a very good sport about it. But because this was all happening, I was getting fewer films to oversee. And I pitched an idea to my boss to create a new role dedicated just to this part of my job. And it took about a year, but he made it happen. It seemed like a good move, but I struggled about letting go of strategy. You know, that was why I was in marketing. And I was going to be specializing now. Is this the right choice? I always say hindsight is 20/20. Like you don't always know if you made the right choice until way after you made that decision. So ask me again in a few years. I'm still not sure I did the right thing. But as I started approaching the 10-year mark at Fox, just like this point at New Line a decade before, I started to wonder, should I be thinking about what's next? No longer did I start thinking about that, did the Walt Disney Company buy 20th Century Fox. It kind of makes me think I should stop thinking about what's next because big things happen when I do that. But my job was retained this time. So now I focus on international events for Disney. It's really amazing to get to peek behind the curtain of an even bigger studio. But if I hadn't made that choice about my job at Fox a year prior, would they have even kept me? I don't know. But I arrived at my new desk in Burbank in December of 2019. And 3 months later, we'd all be sent home because of COVID. Now, for every single one of us, the last year has been so unexpected. Just as I was adapting to my new role at Disney, everything was changing again because of this pandemic. And we all had to roll up our sleeves and think differently about how we hold virtual events. So I was doing events in space, we can't do that anymore. And now we have to hold them virtually. And being at a studio, we often show a lot of really sensitive pre-release film footage, and that's very difficult online. There's also going to be a lot more change coming too, because the impact of COVID has really made an impact on the industry I'm in. But I try really hard to look for the opportunity. Maybe it's going to go my way, maybe it won't. So truth number 9, every job experience is a piece of the puzzle about what works for you. Where do you shine and what holds you back? Be honest with yourself about these answers. They will inform your next step. I mean, big company versus small company, generalist versus specialist. Are you more hands-on or are you a delegator? I know a lot of answers to number 9, thanks to like performance reviews over the years, peer reviews. I had a 360 where my coworkers evaluated my work. That's both terrifying and empowering. And just by doing the different jobs that I've done and also observing other people do their jobs, it just keeps painting a picture about what your ideal job looks like. And few jobs ever tick every box, but maybe you'll get really close. So I want to wrap it up to like an even 10. Your path is your path. Don't judge yours against someone else's. This one is so hard. It seems so simple, but it's not. But with social media especially, it's really impossible not to compare yourself with others. You see people speed by you on the ladder, you speed by other people, you get frustrated about the jobs you didn't get, about the ones your friends did get. You have to try to block it out and just keep forging ahead. These 10 truths I have lived and learned over and over again. I also draw advice from other places, and this one goes back to 300 BC, and it sits over my desk to remind me every day, by Aristotle. He says, what we have to learn to do, we learn by doing. It always reminds me just to keep doing the work, keep my head down and keep doing the work. If you aren't doing what you want, what can you get from this experience right now that's going to get you to the next one? Your path might not be a straight line, and I assure you, it's uphill and the road is way longer than you want it to be, but it's there. So my fellow Wolverines, I am always going to be rooting for you. Swing for the fences. Thank you for listening to me. Bye.